Auburn is not a place, it is a people. The loveliest village on the plains is more than a college sports venue, more than a university filled with historic buildings, more than a quaint little southern town. Its worth lies within its people, those that call Auburn home, whether that be for a single day at a time or for a lifetime. Much like our legendary Toomer's oak trees, our stories are the product of a firm foundation laid in the beginning of our Auburn story. These are the stories of the Auburn family. These are their roots.
War Eagle Auburn fans, and welcome back to Auburn Roots as we continue our journey of exploring and sharing the experiences of your Auburn family. Here we are at episode 13, the unlucky 13. So I don't know that my guest is happy about having that number as their episode, but either way, I'm still happy to have them here. Whether they're happy to have the number 13 on there or not. Let me introduce my guest. His name is Mr. Ragan Ingram. He is a longtime family friend of my family, and they have been great friends and even have helped us get to a few Auburn games every once in a while. And I have some very fond memories of some fun games that they had hands in getting us there and kind of experience. So, Ragan, thank you so much for joining me and being willing to tell your Auburn roots.
Hey, Kyle, I'm glad to be here. Hey, number 13 was my first jersey number in sports. So
well, there you go.
It's perfect. For the Floyd Blue Bees of YMCA football in Montgomery, Alabama, I was number 13. Serendipitous, right?
Yeah, that's the way we'll kind of type the storyline up tonight. It was just meant to be for you to be number 13 and harness it. And, so you already mentioned it right off the top. You're from Montgomery, Alabama.
Born and raised my whole life. I've outside of my brief time at Auburn and living in near Wetumpka, I've been in this circle my entire life.
So let's talk about that real quick before we kind of dive into your story and maybe start from the beginning of that. But the Montgomery area, I always like to ask people, especially the areas that they're from, Montgomery, what is your perspective of the dynamic between Auburn and Alabama, that breakdown? Is it more Alabama? Is it more Auburn? Is it kind of somewhere in the middle? I'm always interested to hear people's opinions.
I would say like just about everywhere in the state outside of Lee County, it's probably a little bit more Alabama folks. Mm-hmm. You'll just see a deeper, you'll see a larger portion of Auburn folks in the Montgomery area because of how close it is, because it's, just 50 miles away down the road. I mean, but if you just get to pure numbers, it's probably more Alabama, though it probably doesn't appear to the naked eye as much as others might think.
We do tend to be a little bit passionate about showing our colors, wearing them, having them on bumper stickers. Now, I will say this, if I may go ahead and take an early shot at our Alabama friends, they tend to just wear their T-shirts they got from Walmart. That's about it.
What can you do? What can you do?
You just can't help them sometimes. They got to get their gear somewhere, and Walmart's the best place for them. Not that Walmart's bad or anything. I'd love me some Walmart, but
I'm kind of over Walmart at this point.
I think, look, at this point, a little kind of pulling back the curtain here. We're recording this during the middle of COVID-19 pandemic 2020. If you're listening to this far from the future, I think we're all tired of Walmarts and any kind of superstore that you've got to go in there and try to search for things. It's madness out there right now.
No, it's no fun going out and shopping, particularly with the mask on. We've got our mask order here, and but we do what we do, and hopefully we can persevere through this and get past it and get on the other side.
Absolutely.
Sooner rather than later, and hopefully have football and basketball too. I mean, I'm just as passionate about it as both.
Yeah, fingers crossed over here on my end. I don't know what the future holds, but on my end, I know who holds the future. So I definitely take comfort in that. And I think we will see sports in some capacity.
Hey, we did last night. We had a football game at Crampton Bowl. It was not a pretty game, but it was Austin Peay and Central Arkansas. So
that was the weirdest thing. I caught that the other night, and I was like, in what world does Montgomery open up the college football season? I mean, that's just...
They've actually been doing it about 3 or 4 years now. They have an FCS kickoff game. Samford played in it a couple of years ago. Jacksonville State has played in it. And I don't think this was the original plan for these two schools, but that's how it ended up because of with cancellations. And the crazy thing was, and I realize this doesn't have anything to do with Auburn, but Central Arkansas has only got like 3 games on its schedule. Or no, it's got like 8 games on its schedule, and like 2 of them are like home and aways. And Austin Peay only has like 3 games right now scheduled because of COVID-19. They're going to Pitt and going to Cincinnati, and then that'll be it. They'll play 3 games, and they've already lost 1. So hey, we're done. You want
What
to
a
talk
year.
about Auburn, though, and I want to talk about Auburn.
Well, I always love to hear, what's going on in the region that you're in, and that's something that's important to it there. But yeah, let's dive a little deeper into what makes Ragan a great Auburn fan, and where
I
do
don't know if
those
I'm a great Auburn fan, but I've been a long time one, or a lifelong.
Hey, if you help the Loomis family get some tickets, you're a great Auburn fan. That's all that matters.
Okay, I'll take that. Um, I grew up. I grew up in it. My father went to Auburn. He was, and his sister did. He was from a little town in northeast Alabama called Center. Dad served in World War II as a Marine, as a high-speed radio operator, and he got out of the Marines in about, I think it was 46. I think his enlistment ended at that point, and he didn't know what he was going to do. But his sister had gone to Auburn, and some of his friends from his hometown went to Auburn, and so he went to Auburn. And Dad was dirt poor. He was on the GI Bill. He had an interest in reading and writing, and so he got on the newspaper staff. Ended up being sports editor at the Plainsman in 1948 before he graduated, and he also taught himself how to play the bass drum in the band to make sure he could get into the game for free. And so that kind of started a lifelong love affair for Dad. He passed away in 2007, but one of the last cogent moments that we had together was the 2007 Auburn Florida game. So if you ask me at what point what's your favorite Auburn football game, that might come up among several others, obviously, but that's a special one to me that we got to watch before he passed away. He started taking me over there. My first Auburn football game was 1969, the Alabama game in Legion Field. Connie Frederick faked a punt and ran it 84 yards, but it was really 99 with the 15 for the snap. And I was hooked ever since. There was never a doubt. My brother and sister both went to Auburn. They graduated in the fall of '82. I went to Auburn, and we were friends with David Housel, and David put me on in the sports information office as an intern. And I had a lot of fun. I had too much fun, and I ended up coming home. I ended up coming home in 1983 because I spent too much time doing that and too much time doing things that had nothing to do with being a college student, and learned the hard way. So I came home and went to AUM with the idea of I'll turn around and go right back as soon as I get my grades up. But I got a job at the Advertiser as a sports writer, as a part-timer, as a person who'd cover high school games and answer the phone and take down stuff to put in the paper. And I ended up staying. I stayed there for 14 years. That was my full-time profession for 14 years, and covered a lot of Auburn football games, covered the Auburn beat from part of 86, 7, 8, and 9. So a lot of those games, a lot of the incredible games that they played in that period, the Tillman reverse game, I covered it. The tie against Syracuse, I covered it. The earthquake game, and I've got a story about that. Covered that, and and everything in between, football and basketball, home and away. So that was part of it. And then in the spring of '97, I realized that I didn't want to be in the newspaper business any longer, because I thought it would mean I would have to leave this area. And at that point, my mother was very ill, and she would ultimately pass that year. And I wanted to be able to spend more time with my family, with my kids, because they were little at that point. And so I left, and I got to be a fan again. So from 1969 as a 5-year-old until 1983 or 4, I was a hardcore fan. Got into my newspaper world, and I had to kind of set the fandom aside to be a objective observer, and I was. I didn't get up and down on the wins and losses. But when 1997 came and I walked out the building at the end of, I guess it was the end of May 1997, I said, "Hey, I get to be a fan again." And so that was, and I got to share that with my kids, and thinking of the games that we got to go to, and the phone calls that we have, and the texts that I have with my son and my daughter during games, and how we get all wound up about everything. It's a family thing, and everybody talks about Auburn family, and it's a real thing. It's a real thing within families, and it's a collective thing that people share, a shared experience. My wife and I got in my pickup truck last Saturday and said, "Let's just go for a ride." And where did we go? We ended up driving to Auburn. Why? Just, I don't know. It was like the pool was there, had to drive down College Street up to Toomer's Corner, past Sanford Hall, see all the people, see everything that was going on. And it was a very centering experience to say, hey, this is something that's been important to us, to our family. And both of our kids ended up going there and graduating. And, my daughter's teaching her daughter how to say War Eagle. And it's kind of like, whoa, at this point. But she's just 15 months old. It's a step-by-step process. We'll get Absolutely.
There. I love that you brought up that it's a family thing. And I think, honestly, that's what it always goes back to for us as Auburn fans is that, it sounds cliche. It sounds a little corny at times, but there's a real basis, a real foundation built upon that. And I think if I may jump back in your story a little bit to the very beginning, you mentioned your father right off the bat. And, so many people that I talk to, they mentioned their mother, their father, their aunt, their uncle, someone in their family started sharing with them about Auburn, whether it was they handed them a football or they told them, let me tell you about this story of this time I was visiting Auburn or I went to school there. And you mentioned your dad. And can you remember like any of the fun like stories or anything that he would share with you?
Several things that jump out to me. I mean, obviously, we would go to games, and this was before there was even an upper deck at all in the stadium. I mean, it was just the enclosed bottom bowl, and you could park fairly close to the stadium. I mean, basically where the arena is now, there were like streets and other little buildings, and you could park around there, and you could take a Nerf football and throw the football back and forth, and then go into the game and watch it. And it wasn't. I mean, the tailgating wasn't nearly as formal as it is now. I mean, it was literally open up your trunk, pull out a cooler that had ham sandwiches, Coca-Cola, and Golden Flakes, and eat that, and then go in and then watch the game and come home. But I think of other things. I mean, a lot of this is not even on the campus, not even the game. The Bama punt game. This is one of my favorites. I was at the house. Dad was raking leaves at the house I grew up in, and there was a ton of them. We had a ton of trees, and we're raking, and I'm like, well, I'm in third grade, and I'm not really interested in any of this. And I'm just dying with every possession because we can't get anything going. We're getting beat. I'm like, oh no, because it was already horrible after last year, after Sullivan and Beasley got beat so badly in '71, and so I give up. I mean, I go down to the street to my friend's house, and we're throwing the football. And then all of a sudden I hear this just insane screaming. And I went, that sounds like that's coming from my house. And so I kind of get down to the edge of the street, and there was a big old pile of leaves, and Dad's just slinging them up in the air, screaming and hollering. So me and my buddy David, we just take off sprinting like crazy men. And it's like, you think it's like houses, but you're acting like you're running 3 miles, and it's like the most arduous run ever. And we get there, and he's screaming and hollering. We just blocked the second punt, and and he's just going crazy, and he can't even speak. He's laughing and yelling so loud. But I get there in time to hear the extra point. I do hear that, and so then we end up winning the game. We stop them. David Langner, who scored the touchdowns, actually had an interception after that to ice the game. And it was just, he thought that was the greatest day ever, and it was. And we had a big cookout that night because we were all excited. And, it's just things like that. And then, the sad thing of that is we don't beat Alabama again until I'm a freshman in college. Mm. And that's like the dark ages, because go back to your original question. Is Montgomery an Auburn area or an Alabama area? I didn't have many friends that were Auburn fans because the kids I went to school with were all Alabama fans. So for 9 years, it's like, just getting pounded every day, every year about this, that, and the other thing. And I'm like, I get to Auburn, it's my freshman year, and I, in my history class, I had several football players. My roommates were in Army ROTC, so they taught me into taking the 101 class. Well, it was the entire signing class except for Bo. I don't know why. Bo didn't take it, but, it was like, 17 or 18 freshman football players in there. I think it was because the class was easy. And, but, and you think about the foundation they built and then winning that game in Birmingham, ending the streak. And that night I was going back to Auburn, but I drove home to see my dad first. I made the guys I was riding with, so we got to go by Montgomery first on the way. We're not going 280. We're going to go 65, 85. So I can go hug my dad. Yeah. And, just because it was so cathartic. My childhood was listening to games on the radio if we weren't there, basketball games on the radio. And it was not like we had a stereo system. I had a clock radio in my bedroom, and he would sit at the table. My mother had painted this desk that was kind of like where I'd do my homework, and he'd sit there drumming on it because he wrote a lot with a typewriter. So he'd act like he was typing or just nervous habit of drumming. And I would shoot Nerf basketballs the whole time while these basketball games were going on. And it was just, that's how I was raised. And we lived and died with every possession. If it was a turnover, we'd groan, or if it was a basket, we'd cheer, yell, and holler. And that's just kind of, maybe everybody's experience was like that. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know. But it was our experience. And, my brother and sister were a little bit older than me. They were actually a lot, 11 years and 9 years. So, I mean, it was like, from third grade on, it was just me and him and mom in the house anyway. And she liked it, but it wasn't anything that she got wound up about. It was just something that Dad and I shared, and for the rest of our time together.
Let me tell you the part that I resonate with perfectly there is you describing your dad jumping in the leaves and throwing them up, because now I know that I shouldn't be ashamed that my dad acted just as ridiculous about Auburn football games.
Believe me, as much as I adored your dad, the behaviors ran, very, very, very clear and very close, I would say.
And I would have to admit that I probably exhibit a few more of those behaviors than I should. So just a little admitting of my own flaws here.
We can't control who our family is.
Exactly.
You can't stop genetics.
You cannot stop genetics. But that's great. And speaking of genetics, your synopsis of your kind of story there at the beginning, you mentioned your dad had been part of the Plainsmen, and then you got into some career with sports writing and journalism. Did that play a role in it, that your dad's history with that, or was that just something you fell into?
He spent 60 years in that business essentially, and actually my brother and sister got journalism degrees and I didn't, but I'm the one that ended up doing it for longer than they did. When you were a kid, my dream was to I wanted to be the sports editor of the Montgomery Advertiser because I thought that was like the greatest job ever. I went to a Montgomery Rebels baseball game, and Dad took me up into the perch that was the press box, and there was this old guy sitting up there, and I'm like, "Who's that?" And he goes, "Well, that's the sports editor of the Montgomery Advertiser." And I'm like, "He gets paid to come here and watch baseball?" I'm like, "Yeah, this is a pretty cool gig. I want that." And I was like, 7, and that was the job I wanted. And then you always have dreams of, well, maybe one day I could write for Sports Illustrated or so-and-so. And I was never that talented. I guess, one thing the good Lord maybe was kind of self-aware that, I was going to go to a certain level, and, the things that are important to you, change, as you get older. And I wouldn't trade the experience of having done that and I got to cover a lot of exciting things, NCAA tournaments, the Masters, and then things as crazy as a turkey calling contest. It just, you kind of run the gamut and all of that. But, I definitely wouldn't trade the experiences I've had since then. My kids were very fortunate. My son was at Auburn 2009 through the 2013 season. He took a red shirt year, and he got the 2013 on the back end of it. And my daughter was there. 2012 was her freshman year, which got that out of her system. And then, it got better after that. She finished, I guess, 15 was her last fall and graduated at 16. So, they were both there for some really exciting times. And, so I cherish that for them and get a kick out of that. She would, send me texts from what players she had classes with, and my son, the same thing, though not many of the players were in engineering classes with him.
There are a few, but not that many.
Not many. Not as many. They that's kind of he was in software engineering. That was more of a highly technical area. But the thing about it, as you transition from little kid looking up, college age person going through it, to as you get older and watch it, you see it where everybody is in their journey on this, and how they react to things. And I have, I mentioned my 2 siblings. They each had 3 boys, and all 6 of them were maniacal Auburn fans. They're the same way. and 5 of them graduated from Auburn. One of them graduated from Samford, and probably kicks himself every now and then that he didn't go to Auburn, but had an opportunity to go there. And they're the same way. I mean, we'll send texts or Facebook messages or whatever, and fuss about something, or fuss about this call, or want to know, is Gus going to run up the middle 14 straight times today? Or are we gonna take the cover off the offense, or are we gonna man, if Derek Brown could have kept his feet, whatever.
Oh, man.
Pick the moment. It's always, it always comes back to something like that with us.
You hurt me with that last one, because I was there in the swamp this past season for Derek Brown tripping over his own. I mean, literally, we said there was a sniper in the stands that took him out. Like, the man had all kinds of open grass, and you just asked the question, what if that had been a touchdown? And
there's been so many times, and maybe that's part of the Auburn experience too, is that you tend to view the what ifs of so many different things. I mean, I think about it when the teams that I covered, that '88 team. I mean, if LSU obviously scored that touchdown on 4th down in the earthquake game. But they've converted 4 fourth downs on the final drive. Yeah. 4 fourth downs. I'm like, who does that? And the thing about that, I guess the story I was going to tell was, because it was a night game, I had to be prepared to hit send on my computer, on my laptop, as soon as the game was over. So I'd written this story about this heroic Auburn win, that they had played incredible defense, won 6-0, and I'm just sitting here waiting to hit send. So the game, when the game's over and they start driving, and I'm like, this is going to be a problem. This is going to be, basically having to sit there and hit delete and rewrite again immediately. And it was just like, ugh. And you knew that was a big night. And hey, I was in Pasadena, so I know the almost there, but I didn't get to go to Glendale, and I hate that. But I was in the room I'm in now, my den where I watch ball games, and me and my son were in here. My wife can't watch the games with me because I get too wound up. She'll go in the other room with her daughter, and we went out and rolled our little tree in the yard, and it was just a special night to share, again, to share that and to celebrate it.
Absolutely.
And I was thinking about it because got on YouTube and I'll switch over to basketball for a minute. The Auburn, Tennessee SEC championship game from 19 popped into my feed, and I'm like, I was here by myself, and you would have thought I was around 15,000 people. I was high-fiving invisible people, and screaming and hollering and coaching and officiating and doing everything you could do. And it's just because we enjoy the games, but more than we enjoy the identification and the kinship of it all.
And I think that's the great thing about the Auburn family as well is, football and basketball and even baseball are always going to be that bread and butter, but we get so excited about anything, sports wise. I remember, what was it, 2 seasons ago, maybe 1 season ago, the Auburn equestrian team was going down to the last ride, and I'm trying to get Twitter feed updates like frantically, like, hold on, don't talk to me. I got to find out if they won this last ride, because it's coming down to this. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is.
I couldn't tell you how you scored. It is staying on the horse the purpose, or whatever. It doesn't matter. But if they're keeping score, you want to win.
Exactly.
And it's like the golf a few years ago, winning the SEC championship, and and then you meet people who know people, or you're aware of someone on the team through a relationship that you may have, and you follow them. Like in baseball a couple of years ago, I've never met Davis Daniel, but he went to St. James, and that's where I went, and that's where my kids went. So I was like, hey, I'm a Davis Daniel fan just because of that. And, so you get kind of emotionally invested that way. And the other thing is the immediacy of it all. Again, talking about when I was a kid, there was like one game on a week, and Auburn might be on TV 2 times a year. Now you can watch on this laptop football game, basketball game, baseball game, softball game, and a number of gymnastics meets. I mean, you can consume all of this to the point where now all of a sudden you're not just an Auburn football fan anymore. And I've had season tickets to football. I do have season tickets to basketball, so I'm going a bunch to those 2. But hey, now I can watch them. Sit in my recliner and watch all this stuff.
Yeah.
It's an amazing thing. It's a wonderful thing. My wife might question it sometimes, but I mean, but I have the opportunities to consume it a lot more. And the other thing is with social media, we have the ability to talk about it more, well, like we're doing right now, or get on a message board or post on Facebook or tweet or whatever. It's an outgrowth of the explosion of technology and how we communicate with each other. And it's a good thing and it's a bad thing too. I mean,
it can be.
It cuts both ways. And it's interesting because of my newspaper background. I remember when we first got the internet at the newspaper, and it was like the holy of holies. I mean, you had to go up to this book and sign in what time you got on, where you were going, and sign out when you were done. I mean, I'm sure they could have tracked it, but it was just there was like one computer that had access. Now they had satellite feeds of information from the Associated Press, so you gather all the scores and the box scores of baseball games, and football games, and basketball games, and the like. But you could do different kind of research that you'd never really been able to do before unless you went to a library. And, kids today, they don't know anything about libraries. I mean, this is their library in front of them instead of going to a card catalog and pulling something out. And,
right.
and all this has just led to an immediacy and to a ability to get more information more than ever and act upon it for good or for ill.
It is sometimes interesting to hear people who have lived through these explosions, whether it's technology, culture, or anything like that, and see their perspectives. And you've had a very interesting perspective on that, being as working in the Montgomery Advertiser, and kind of, like you said, you saw the beginning of the internet there. I'm sure that helped you in some ways, but as time has gone on.
Well, I mean, it's just different. I mean, and obviously, I guess it's sad when you pick up a literal newspaper now and see that it's a shadow of what it used to be. When I was a kid, we call it a two-paper Sunday if Auburn won and Alabama lost, because you go get the Birmingham News too, so you could read everything about both games, the one that you liked and the one that you didn't like, and glad they got beat. I mean, that's just kind of what you did and how you did things. And now we've got several websites that are totally dedicated to it. I mean, you got your rivals, you got your 24/7, you got all sorts of things. Then you've got the space that you're occupying. There's just so many different ways to learn more, talk more, and consume more than ever before. And it's not changing. It's clearly not changing.
Absolutely. And since we're actually talking about things of the past, let's jump back one more time in your story to your 2 years. Is that correct? You spent at Auburn? Was it 2 years or?
About a year, basically. It was in 82 and 83.
So give me your perspective of that. You're not the first one to say they had to kind of leave Auburn a little bit earlier than they planned to, and you won't be the last.
You wouldn't recognize. I mean, if I walked out of my apartment, which was it was Arcadia Apartments on Opelika Road, next to the old Guthrie's. If you know,
yes,
kind of there at Opelika Road and Gay Street. There was an apartment complex next to that. I could crawl out of my apartment window and go to Guthrie's.
Oh, jealous.
Now, I'm really going to blow your mind. Guthrie's served fish fingers and hamburgers in 1982 and 83.
What?
Yes, this is true. I'm not making this up. You could get fish fingers, which I never had. The burgers were all right, but I mean, the chicken fingers were the star. They figured that out, got rid of the other stuff pretty shortly thereafter. But, it was the Haley Center was Haley Center. I mean, people still people lost there, probably freshmen from the class of 82 that are, got turned around and never emerged from one of the quadrants. But I'll think of all the things that have been built. I mean, like the hotel that was not there downtown, the Hotel Conference Center, all the buildings, just amazing. I mean, you go down Magnolia. I mean, if you go down Magnolia from Toomer's Corner towards Donahue, I mean, those were old buildings there. They were not the ones that are there now. I mean, particularly the business building, the Shelby Center. It was a lot smaller. I mean, there was probably maybe 60% of the enrollment that there is now. It was below 20,000 total. parking, you had D parking and you were out on the edge. I just walked. It was just as easy for me to get up and walk and go to class than it was otherwise. I mean, we didn't have Auburn Arena, didn't have the east side upper deck, just all sorts of things. The barn that was there that burned during the LSU game, that's where they played intramural basketball. Just things like that. I mean, and it was, and I guess kids are a little different now than they were then, but they weren't too different. I mean, they were just, everybody was there trying to find themselves and figure out what they were going to do and what they were going to be with their lives and still try to have fun. And, Coach Dye was just getting going. I mean, it was his second year when I got there, and it was obvious. You could tell that there was a new vigor that was there. I mean, Auburn had been kind of beaten flat during the 70s. I mean, they had a couple of good teams. I mean, obviously the 74 team, Coach Jordan's next to last year, was a really good team. There was one really good team. I guess it was 78. Charlie Trotman was the quarterback. But other than that, it was just, there was just a lot of struggling. I mean, they would, in the 1980, Doug Barfield's last year, they were 5-6, but went 0-6 in the league. You only played 6 conference games, and so you would play. You'd have an interesting schedule. I mean, my freshman year, Auburn played Nebraska at home, and that was an interesting game. My story from that is that from that game, when I was that fall, at football games, I worked in the press box. But with a few minutes to go in the game, I would go to the field, and my job was to go to the locker room, into Coach Dye's locker room, his little office inside the locker room that he had, and get on the phone with the press box to get the stats of the game and write them down and hand them to him. So when he would be interviewed by Jim Fife and Pat Sullivan, who were doing the broadcast then, kind of talk about the game, say, well, we had 6 penalties and that's not good. Or we held them to 3 of 15 on third down. That's a good thing. So I did that for the home games. Well, that Nebraska game, it was a 7-7 game late in the half. I mean, it was, back and forth. You could tell Auburn was hanging on for dear life, that Nebraska was a really talented team. And Nebraska scored, made it 14-7, and then they just killed Auburn in the second half. I mean, it was one of the first times I'd ever really seen it. From the press box view, you could see the line of scrimmage move. Because, I mean, Nebraska had Dave Remington, the Remington Trophy, Dean Steinkuhler. I mean, they were just pushing the pile and get in that room. And I'm like, oh, no, Coach Dye's going to come in here. He's going to be just furious. And so I'm sitting there. I've taken all the info down. I wait for him to come in. He just comes in, grabs it, and he gets on the headsets. And they haven't gone on the air yet. They're in a commercial break. And he just says, Pat, I'd have never believed they'd done that to us. And he was very calm. I mean, he was just like, it tells me we got a lot of work to do. And they did. I mean, they ended up that year going 9-3. Next year won the SEC. And just all the things that kind of got started in that era, just you could tell. And he was a young coach. He was in his early 40s at that, I guess mid 40s at that point. And you could tell just the energy just oozed from him. I mean, just the toughness and he had an idea of where he was going and where he wanted to take things. And it was a fun time to watch things happen.
Hey Auburn fans, I want to take a quick time out from this episode to bring your attention to something very special. Here at the E2C Network, we pride ourselves on bringing you the best content for Auburn fans out there. And best of all, it's free to you. But just because it's free doesn't mean there aren't costs, especially when you have a library of hundreds of podcasts, videos, blogs, and more. Many of you have reached out and asked how you can support this network in the past. Well, now I have your answer. It's called the E2C Network Booster Club over at patreon.com/E2C Network. There you'll find a membership monthly reward system where you can sign up for as little as $1 and get different perks at different tiers. Some of those perks include things such as apparel, eligibility to join us on future podcasts, recognition as an E2C Network booster, exclusive communications, and bonus content that is available nowhere else. If you love this network and want to help us keep producing podcasts like this one, please head on over to patreon.com/E2C Network to join the E2C Network Booster Club. You can also get there by going to our website, e2cnetwork.com/support. Whether you decide to join or not, we are still so appreciative that you would support us by just listening and being here, because each and every one of you is part of our E2C Network family. Well, that's it. Timeout's over. Let's get back into the episode. Not that there's not a certain time in Auburn that's not special, but there are these certain moments and eras in time there that I really think define the sports part of it, the campus life, the town. And you talked a lot about how, the other upper deck wasn't up yet. The barn was still not burned down at that point. It seems like you were there in a time where there was a little bit of transition, a major part of transition, not just in maybe buildings and space.
We talk about things today, and I may mention this somewhere. When I was a senior in high school, Jackie Sherrill got hired at Texas A&M to be the coach. He had been at Pittsburgh and won, and they had come off a national championship, and he had not won one, but he had done extremely well. And A&M hired him, and he became the first $1 million football coach. That's not $1 million a year. That's just the contract was worth $1 million for like 4 years or 5 years. And it was like almost $2 million. It was like a 1.7 over 4 or 5 years. So he was going to get paid $400,000 a year. And people thought, oh, this is incredible. We can't have this. This is the end of the world. Now we're paying coaches, $7, $8, $9, $10 million a year for 1 year. I mean, just think about how all of this is just like blown out the back end in essentially, 35 years, 30 years, 35, or, closer to 40 if you go count to 80. But, I mean, it's really taken off in the past 20. And it's a big money deal. It is a huge money deal. And we talk about building football facilities, and we talk about building all these things, and these things cost money. But people like to win, and people, demand excellence, and they demand things, and things cost money. And that's, I mean, it's really neat to go to places and see how fancy the facilities are. But you also, when you step back, you think, ooh, that we're almost losing a little of the romantic, and maybe that's just the old guy in me speaking, because, you just kind of sense, man, that's not the way it used to be. But the other thing is that the football that they're playing now is just so much better. It's fun. It's funny to watch these old clips and these old games and watch a quarterback try to throw a 15-yard out. It looks like it's like a
dead duck.
I mean, it takes 10 minutes to get over there. I'm like, man alive. Igbenogany would have intercepted it 6 times and run it back 5 of them by the time that ball got there.
That is true. And the game has definitely shifted and changed a lot over the years. But I would say that there are some things that the old ways and the old times, they did things a lot better. I think they played a lot, I won't say tougher, but it was a different degree of toughness because, you're playing with less padding, you're playing with not as sophisticated equipment and things. And there was a degree of fearlessness that I think has not been lost. It was just different than the time now.
It was different. I'll say it's different. The one things or the two things that haven't changed about football is that it will always, always, always be about blocking and tackling. Because if you can't block, you're not going to score. And if you can't tackle, you're not going to stop somebody from scoring. And that's how football's played. I mean, it's about scoring. And so that's why, I've always, we got to recruit good offensive linemen, got to have good offensive linemen. And, thankfully we've had good defenses, and the continuity, particularly that they've had for so many years now with Steele and Rodney Garner coaching the defensive line. That's a good thing. It seemed like Rodney was a guy that I covered. I mean, he was on the team when I was covering him. And, he was and he was he was an offensive lineman, and he was a good one. I mean, it was like, this is a tough dude, and he hadn't changed. I mean, he is the same tough dude as he was as a player. Now he's just coaching kids, and he does it well.
So this is a question I want to ask you next, and you kind of brought it up there with, you've seen a lot of things, and I think the Rodney Garner situation there is a great example. You saw him as a player, now he's a coach. You've seen a lot of things change in Auburn, as we've already brought up. So how does Auburn, as it quickly continues to grow, change, adapt, still maintain that small town feel? It still is a small town, but I think, if you take me back to my graduation year, it's changed and grown so much. So how does it stay the same?
It changed in 6 months. I mean, in 9 months. It's crazy. It's about people, and it's about relationships, and it's about the when you go to a game, you generally go with the same people, you generally see the same people, and that's as much as a part of the deal as the location itself. And so as long as you keep those ties together, they can build another building. They can, add another layer of luxury onto something. It's not going to change it because of the relationship you have with your friend, or your family member that you go to games with. I guess, I'm kind of in that window now. In a few years, my granddaughter will be able to go to games, and that'll be cool to be able to see it again through little eyes. Because I remember seeing how my two kids looked at it when they were little. I mean, when they were like 6 and 3, and we would take them to a game, and how wide-eyed they'd get. I remember the 2003 Alabama game. My daughter and wife were on a cruise with her dance team. And so my son and I were batching it at home, and we went over for the game. And my sister's niece was a Tigerette and knew us, saw us, waved to us. She grabbed my son and took him inside the ropes at Tiger Walk up by the stadium. And so he's like in the middle of them as they're coming in. And Cadillac chest bumps him and knocks him down. Because, he was 13, but, you would have thought he was 10 because he was so small. And chest bumps him and takes him down and picks him back up. And my son's just like grinning like from ear to ear. I've got a picture somewhere of him just looking in awe, kind of upward as these guys are coming by and high-fiving him and the whole bit. And, that's, not everybody gets to experience that, but everybody's got something kind of like that goes a bunch.
I think there's a lot of stories like that, and I'm not saying that Auburn's got some exclusive thing where there's this.
I've got friends that are Alabama fans that have gone every weekend or so many weekends forever, and I know folks that have gone to Mississippi State, and the same thing, that they've had this long, deep and abiding tie, and I've been to 2 or 3 other I've been to several places. Road games. I think of going up to Kansas State and seeing people there, and how they reacted, and up to Missouri in 17, and there was nobody there. It was like maybe they don't care in Missouri, but it was there. You are who you are, and your experience is who you are, and it's just ours seems to mean a lot to us, and that's okay.
Yeah, it just, if I may steal the SEC slogan, it just means more to us on a different level.
I think it does. Clearly it does. We've got bigger stadiums, bigger crowds, more, we sell more T-shirts and hats and posters and paintings and whatever else, that comes out.
We talked a lot intermittently about your time at the Montgomery Advertiser. If you had to pinpoint your favorite game that you ever wrote about or covered, what would it be?
Well, the Tillman reverse game, the Iron Bowl in 1986 was my first one. So I guess that will always kind of, the first time I got to write the story with my name on it, for an Iron Bowl would be a great one. There are games where you felt like you wrote a great story. One of them would have been Georgia Tech in '87. If you listen to the Jim Fife highlights tape, the Tillman game, they played just horribly that game. They really didn't play well at all, and Georgia Tech was not very good. They were behind late, drove the length of the field, and it was really an incredible pass that Jeff Berger made. He just threw a bullet up high in the back of the end zone, and Tillman just pops up like a pogo, and he's on a pogo stick and grabs it between 2 guys, scores a touchdown. Right after that, Georgia Tech gets the ball out to midfield, last play of the game. Andre Bruce from here in Montgomery, crazy guy, just funny, crazy guy. Andre bats the ball. The quarterback throws a pass. Andre bats it up in the air, catches it, runs out the back of the end zone. Keeps going, runs out of the end zone and out of the stadium towards the locker room, because they didn't have an enclosed stadium at that point. It was just like a tunnel in the corner, and he just bared over there, went into the locker room. Vic Irvin from WSFA was the videographer for the Auburn Football Review. Vic doesn't even know they'd scored to go ahead. he was in there set up for the coach to come in here and do the moaning and groaning speech. And Andre comes tearing in the locker room with the football and just falls down at Vic's feet. And Vic's looking down at him like, what are you doing? And Andre's just heaving. He's hyperventilating because he's worn out and excited, and finds out that, Auburn had scored twice in, 20 seconds to win the game when they were down like 10-7. And I felt like I wrote a great story. And that was just a fun one. Had great trips. The bowl games. I was there for the tie, which was a weird game. I was there for the Florida State loss after the '88 season. Trying to think of another great. There were some really good games with Georgia in there as well. I've just it was a lot of fun. And really one in 93, I was actually in sport. I was in news. I'd moved to the news section for a while, but they wanted me to write a front page story about the pageantry of the game. And so I took a friend of mine who lived who drove up from Montgomery, I guess, and met me at my house in Wetumpka. We drove over, and he hung out with me the whole day. And he was finding out stuff, and he was like setting up interviews for me. And I was just laughing and got a big kick out of it. And it was your dad. It was Keith and I had gone over, and he was just, he had a blast. And, when the game time came, he went in the stands and sat and watched. But then he waited for me when it was over, rode back. And, I had several trips that I went with him, I guess, to Georgia a couple of times, and just had a lot of fun with him. And that game was a lot of fun to write about. It was an exciting day. The team that went 11-0 that wasn't on TV, and just, after everything that had happened with the Eric Ramsey stuff, to bounce back from that was a fun game to cover as well.
I think that's probably what makes the Auburn story so much more interesting and more special to us, is the fact that we've had so many valleys and yet we've bounced back. And I think that's not
what
just
Auburn does.
Exactly.
Auburn doesn't do, steady. Auburn's going to go one extreme to the other. Was it that Spencer Hall, I don't know if you read Spencer, but Every Day Should Be Saturday and some of the other stuff, basically said Auburn is the ultimate team of chaos. Either for good or for ill, Auburn is the agent of chaos in college football, and it's hard to argue that.
It is.
And if you think about 2012 to 2013, 2008 to 2010, and all of that, just all the crazy things that happened to get to both of those places.
And I think it makes us value the mountaintop a little bit more because we've seen the valley several times, and it's not pretty.
And I still wear the scars of my childhood of losing to Alabama every year, and just some really bad teams in the mid '70s when I'm like 12 years old, and they're just like, but never give up.
Never give up. Well, real quick, let's see, what are you doing now? We talked a lot about where you're still in Montgomery.
I am a contract lobbyist. I help companies and associations in the legislative process in Montgomery. I've been doing that for about 8 years. I was a state employee. I worked for one of the state departments as an administrator and governmental liaison. Been doing that for, like I said, about 8 years. It's been wonderful. It's great flexibility, and I'm in an office with one Auburn fan and two Alabama fans, and we deal with each other.
Now, how does that work in government work? How do you keep that separate?
Everybody knows who everybody is, and everybody will give each other the business. I mean, it's everybody twists the knife in each other on a Monday after a ball game. So it's it's what we do. I mean, particularly here. I mean, because of the prevalence of both teams' fans, that there's always some good knife twisting on Mondays.
Yeah, working in the government is interesting enough in itself, but when you throw the aspect of Auburn, Alabama, and just college sports in general into the mix, it gets even more interesting, I'm sure, especially on a Monday.
Yeah.
All right, how about this? I like to always ask my guests towards the end of sharing their story some rapid fire questions. Now they're not so rapid fire because you might want to explain yourself. I don't know. We'll find out. Got about 12 of those for you. It'll be about maybe something like this or that, or choose your favorite this. If you're ready for those, we'll knock those out right now.
Bring it.
All right. Question number 1, orange or blue?
Duh. Blue.
Now, why is that a duh?
I'm a big guy. Big guys don't wear orange. I've always liked blue's my favorite color. It's always been my favorite color. I don't
You're,
look good in orange.
you're
What
not
was
the
it?
first person to
What
give
was
me
it
that answer.
Blindside? What's her face? Tui, Sandra Bullock said orange wasn't in her color wheel. She wouldn't
Yes.
wear orange. Well, I mean, I have orange stuff, but I prefer the orange, and I'm an anti-orange jersey guy. So if you just go ahead and get that out of the way.
Oh, wow. I know an Auburn uniform guy that would have some issues with that, I think. Question number 2, Aubie or War Eagle?
Oh man, you can't make a choice on that.
I'm going to push for it though. I'm going to see what if you had to choose one.
No, you can't make me.
Well, I can, but I'd like to see if you can.
I love them both. I mean, I've got an Albie over here, and I've got a picture somewhere with Nova. That's kind of those are great traditions, both of them. I mean, the Albie one is cartoon until about 40 years ago, and then my friend Barry Mask being the first Albie, and that was kind of neat. I remember covering a football game at Mississippi State where Albie got kicked out of the stadium because he was misbehaving. Albie commandeered a four-wheeler, and they used to have an open end zone. One of the end zones was open, and Albie was driving it around, and they grabbed him, and he wouldn't return it. And so the security kicked Albie out of the game, made him leave. And then there's nothing, watching the Eagle flights just like so amazing every Saturday.
I'm hearing a little bit of a lean towards Aubie, so I think I'll put you in that camp. Just kind of as
anyway.
He says that did not say that.
Both sides.
That is a great government answer if I've ever heard one. Question number 3: the Auburn fight song or "Glory, Glory to All Auburn"?
Oh, fight song. A bunch of them have "Glory to All Auburn." The fight song is hers.
There's something about "Glory, Glory to All Auburn," though. I know other people do it and have a similar thing, but like you can't spell out Georgia well with that. Like you have to slow it down to do Georgia. Like Auburn, it just flows.
They need to slow a lot of things down, I'm decidedly that. I'll play it on Alexa for my granddaughter every now and then.
Question number 4: your favorite Auburn athletics program? Might be easy. I don't know.
Wow. Football and basketball.
Okay. Football and basketball.
Yeah. And I've loved basketball really for, a long time. That's not just because of Bruce Pearl, even though I think he's been the most wonderful thing ever. I mean, this just goes back to the 1970s, even with Eddie Johnson and Mike Mitchell and Stan Petkavich and guys like that I used to listen to on AM 1440 on a clock radio. But love them both.
Yeah. Number 5, your favorite Auburn athlete?
Favorite Auburn athlete of all time?
Of all time.
The easy answer is Bo. I mean, he's just, such an incredible athlete. My side number 1A is Quentin Riggins, friend of mine.
Love Quentin Riggins.
Quentin Riggins, I covered him when he was a high school player at Lee High School. Love the story that he went on his official visit to Auburn, and Saturday afternoon late came along, and his dad said, well, we got to go. Quentin's got to go to work. And Quentin went back and went home and went to work. And he got that job because his dad took him to McDonald's for lunch one day and told him he was staying and he was working and that his dad was leaving him there. I mean, it's just he was, a late signee, all heart, all effort, great guy, and just a super person, and just think the world of him, and glad he's a trustee now. And but he was also a great football player.
The thing I love about Quentin's story is that it's, everybody's, like, as we already said, it's special, it's unique. Every Auburn story is unique. But his, to me, is so quintessentially Auburn because it comes from such humble roots, such hardworking, just down in the dirt, getting your hands dirty. And then now he's risen to a position of essentially power amongst the Auburn community, and he wields it so well. And I'll be honest with you, I love Alan Green, but I pitched heavily for Quentin Riggins to become the AD when he was.
I would be perfectly fine with that too one day if that were to ever happen. I mean, he's a great guy. He's a smart guy. Clearly loves Auburn and just has so many different skills. But I mean, just in terms of other than that, then you get to people like Charles Barkley, who I just think was fabulous, and Tracy Rocker, Takeo Spikes, Carlos Dansby. I skew on the defensive side a little bit, I guess.
We have to give them love every once in a while. We can't just talk about the points. We got to people that keep the points from being scored.
Yeah.
Question number 6, your favorite Auburn coach.
Favorite Auburn coach, Sonny Smith.
Oh, I love that answer.
I love Sonny. Sonny's great. I mean, I loved Coach Jordan, and got to meet him a few times when I was a youngster. Had an incredible amount of admiration for Coach Dye. I think Gus is a super person, and he occasionally causes me to pull my hair out, but I guess they all have at some level. But in terms of somebody being down to earth and a better coach than probably got credit for, I say Sonny.
Yeah, Sonny is one in a million, and I just love if you can get after the refs the way he does on the air, that just wins me over every single time.
Yeah, Sonny's just always been hysterical. I remember a preseason news conference, and he was talking about what they were going to do this year, and he said, "Yeah, we put in some new defenses this year. We're really excited about it." And then Philip Marshall, who was my boss at the time, asked him, "Well, Sonny, how's your team's academics?" He said, "Oh, we're putting that in next year." I'm just like,
honest.
It's like falling over. You won't do right, but he's a great guy, and his wife Jean is such a lovely lady too.
Oh, that's classic. Question number 7, your favorite non-athletics Auburn person. So a little clarification for you. This can be anything from a family member, a celebrity, someone who is not directly associated with the athletics programs there.
Well, I can't say Housel because he was, but I would say Jack Sims, who was a journalism professor and a peer of my father, was just a super guy. Somebody I always think of when I think of Auburn. I think of people I knew growing up that were fans, people that don't mean names you don't know or anything like that. They're just folks that that loved Auburn, that went to Auburn, that embraced Auburn. And that Auburn embraced them back. So, but there's too many to name.
Yeah. Question number 8, your favorite Auburn building. It's not Haley Center.
Right now, it's the arena. I love the arena. I mean, what a fabulous place to watch a basketball game. Yeah. Not Haley Center. Never Haley Center. I liked going to movies in Langdon Hall. All the buildings that I liked, or went in, are gone for the most part. I like it wasn't on campus, but I like that Guthrie's when it was still open.
Oh man, I miss that Guthrie's so much. It's gone now completely, isn't it?
I think they may have leveled it. I'm not even sure.
I believe it is.
It's not a restaurant anymore. That's for sure.
I do remember going out because I live not far from the Guthrie's as well. And I remember going there every single time I went there was always a football player in there for some reason. I don't know why they chose this Guthrie's as opposed to the one at the gas station, but I was like, I'm going to go there. I'm going to see an Auburn football player. So that's just where I always went. Your favorite Auburn place to eat is question number 9.
Right now, bow and arrow. I'm a barbecue guy. I like the Hound. I like Amsterdam. Back then, I used to eat at the Grill. That was next door to Toomer's back in the day. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think wherever else. It wasn't real food, but I liked the Flush. I mean, it was still open when I was in school. I liked to go get a shake over at the Santa Flush at the Freeze. But right now, bow and arrow because I like brisket and I like some good cube.
Haven't had that one in a while, so that's or that one at all actually. So that's a great selection there. Question number 10: your favorite Auburn tradition that can be sports, non-sports, obscure personal traditions that you have for Auburn. But your favorite Auburn tradition?
I loved the Rec Tech pajama parade.
Oh, that's a good one.
That was a lot of fun. Now Tiger Walk. I mean, how could you not? I mean, it's particularly for a big game. People lining the streets getting excited. But I hate that kids today really don't see how those things went about.
Yeah, I think a lot of those old rivalries we don't see as much anymore. Georgia Tech, Florida State. Those have some ties I think that really should be rekindled at some point. And there might have been a moment where here during COVID-19, we might have been able to make some deal with the ACC to do some things like that. But I guess
that would have been fun, and obviously we've played Florida last year and played Tennessee a couple of years ago, but those were every year games.
Yeah.
For me growing up, I mean, that was just, mid-September, late September, you were going to get a game at Tennessee. Florida was kind of right there before Georgia, usually a week or two before that. So, I mean, I understand why they do the way they do it now, particularly with the expanded league. But, I also hate that, that Auburn folks aren't getting the opportunity to go to those places every other year because those were fun trips.
It is quite a shame. Question 11, your favorite Auburn memory.
Favorite Auburn memory? Well, I've talked about some of them. My son getting knocked down by Carnell Williams would definitely be one of them. I think of the memories of games that I wasn't even there. The Texas A&M game in 2013, I was actually in this room. My son was still a student. He was a senior. He'd come home for the weekend. And he was almost like Spider-Man. He was so nervous on the final drive. He was like sitting on this couch. Then he was sitting on the top of the couch. Then he was standing up on the back of the couch against the wall. And it was almost like he was climbing up with each first down A&M got until we stopped him. And then this is my most favorite current memory, and she's not in here to defend herself. The LSU basketball game this year, if you remember, we were down like 8 with 1:25 to go.
Yep.
Doesn't look like we're going to win. My wife says, I'm going to go to the restroom real quick because it'll get crowded when the game's over, and I'll come back here. I went, okay. She comes back right after we tied the game. She was gone the whole time during the comeback, and I said, I'm sorry, you're going to have to go back to the restroom. I mean, the people that were sitting behind us were just howling at me and howling at her because she had missed the entire deal, the entire comeback. But the kick sixes, the prayer at Jordan Hare. I was not there for the kick six. I was there for the prayer. We talked about Glendale, the watching the comeback in 2010, and just so many different games in that. I mean, just the explosion of noise on Cam's run against LSU, the explosion when Ricardo Lewis caught that ball, which was really, I've heard the noise of the kick six, but that was more of a crescendo because, it was like this rolling noise as it became realized what could happen. The Ricardo thing, nobody really expected to happen until they pulled it in, and it was literally like a bomb went off. And I'll never forget that because my ears just popped when it happened, and I was with a friend at the game, and we were just like, "What happened?" Just amazing because we were basically sitting right down on the sideline at about the 5, right in front of us. It happened right in front of us, and of course he was towards the middle of the field, but we had pretty low seats, and it was just like that didn't happen, and it did. It was just utterly amazing.
I'm sad that you didn't get to be at the kick six, but you picked number 2 in all of Auburn history probably to be at this point.
Yeah, there's a reason why I won't get into it, but I got to spend. I watched it. My wife and I watched it, and I was sat there, and she was going crazy, and I was sitting there worried about whether they were going to have a replay or not. Mm-hmm. I officiated some high school football, so I skew towards thinking about rules too often that I'll get lost in, get away from the actual moment of it and like trying to analyze. Oh, they're not going to review that, are they? No, he didn't. It's about, enjoy it. You won. It's over.
Just enjoy it. I've been there too, so I can appreciate that. Your final question, it might be an easy one, but let's see. Describe Auburn in one word.
The easy one would be family, but I would say connection.
I think that's a more intimate way to describe that family.
Because it gets outside of the family. It connects in different ways. It does connect within your own family. It connects with people that aren't your physical relative, but that you have a connection with. And I would say that would be the word I'd use.
That's a great word for us to end on in this discussion and talking about your Auburn roots and just hearing the stories, the fun times, the memories, your favorite things, all of that in between. Thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Kyle, I've enjoyed it.
I've enjoyed it, and we're obviously, my family is appreciative to you for what you've meant to us, and we're appreciate.
I absolutely adored your dad, and I have no doubts about him. But the thing that the joy that he lived his life with was always an encouragement to me.
It would definitely that. And I think that's something we all hold on to today, whether it was joy about where he was going to end up at the end of all this, or just as something as simple as an Auburn football game. Sometimes a little too much joy.
Never too much.
Never too much. Ragan, thank you again. And War Eagle.